Johnny Depp Amber Heard case is finally coming to a close. And so before it ends, I wanted to bring one more thing to your attention, which is that when it comes to the two expert witnesses that were psychologists in this case, we can't take either of them into consideration when it comes to what happened. And this case is a defamation case, which is why any of this has been coming up, because they have to prove whether or not it happened to prove whether or not what she said was true. So that's why any of this has been gotten into at all, because at the end of the day, this whole case is actually coming from Johnny Depp as to whether or not what Amber Heard said in her op-ed had anything to do with Johnny Depp and whether or not it was true. So those are the deciding factors. But we have a problem when it comes to this, because we have two psychologists, Dr. Curry and Dr. Hughes, who both psychologically analyzed Amber Heard. And the biggest problem is that each of them were contracted by their sides, and each of them came up with a diagnosis based on the side they were working for. So at the end of the day, we have to just completely throw them out, and I want to explain why. First of all, welcome to another video. I'm Ann Blackwood, your Silicon Valley sage sister, here to bring consciousness to the forefront of your daily life to make life a little kinder and simpler. So, though I speak mostly about spirituality and holistic health, have a background in psychology. I originally wanted to be a psychologist. I have also been through some form of therapy or seen some sort of counselor since I was 3, because of not myself, but what my parents were going through. And so I just sort of preemptively got stuck in therapy since I was a very, very little kid because of my parents' dysfunction when I was growing up. So I have a lot of experience, not just with psychology, because I went to college for psychology. I got my degree in psychology. I also got my certification in life coaching so that I could have my private practice in holistic health and wellness. But I've also been to a lot of therapists, counselors, coaches over my lifetime because of my parents having a bad relationship and them eventually getting divorced. So I've been to all sorts of different kinds of therapists as well, and counselors, and even ones that were licensed and ones that were working towards their license, which, like any medical professional, they have to actually have experience in the field counseling people before they can even get their license. So that's why I want to talk about this, because at the end of the day, when it comes to this Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, we can't take into consideration... Hold on, let me turn the volume down on this. I'm missing my ring light. I have still not gotten a new ring light. So I'm using other janky light sources, one of which is my laptop. Anyway, we have to completely throw out Dr. Curry's as well as Dr. Hughes's testimony when it comes to considering anything about this case, even though, I'll be honest, I kind of liked Dr. Curry, even before I knew she was retained by Johnny Depp's side. I said in my other video, I kind of related to her based on the way that she talked about how things were interesting. But that said, we can't even take into consideration what she said because she was retained by Johnny Depp's side. And at the end of the day, came up with the exact answer that they wanted. And unfortunately, even pre-stated before she had even ever given any sort of diagnosis or done any sort of examination. So that throws that right out the window. The thing is that on Amber Heard's side, they have Dr. Hughes, And you gotta just throw that all out the window too, because again, it perfectly exemplifies what they're trying to portray. So you can't really use that as honest testimony, because in my experience, not only can you get psychiatrists, psychologists to diagnose you with things based on what you want to be diagnosed with, but you in general are going to be hard pressed to find, especially psychiatrists and psychoanalysts who specifically diagnose and do diagnostic sessions. You're going to be hard pressed to find one that's not going to diagnose you with something. Bipolar. They mention this in the case. It is all too often that women, females, even girls get diagnosed with bipolar. I got diagnosed with bipolar, and I am not bipolar, and I will explain that. But it makes my point that when you go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, especially one that is there specifically to diagnose, because you've paid them, it's rare these days that I find they won't come up with a diagnosis because you've paid them to diagnose. This isn't ethical, this isn't right, but it's the way it is. So this seems to be the case when it comes to both of these psychologists that have diagnosed Amber Heard. Neither of them are credible at this point because they both come up with the diagnoses that they were paid to on that side produce. So that just makes it so you have to throw all of it out the window, unfortunately. Although both of them are very compelling, and both of them spoke the truth a lot when it comes to everything but how they felt about Amber Heard. And that's not to say that they didn't feel that way about Amber Heard. To be honest, we do also have the issue of our expert problem, where you'll hear people talk about this when it comes to medical professionals in general. If you go to a foot doctor, they're going to think it's a foot thing. If you go to a back doctor, they're going to think it's a back thing. If you go to a ear, nose, and throat doctor, they're going to think it's an ear, nose, or throat thing. Like, this is a problem. You can even go to a general practitioner, and they're just going to have a book where they literally follow the symptoms. My doctor showed me how they did it once when I was younger. And it was not... It definitely didn't make me feel good. It was definitely unsettling to know that she literally was diagnosing by pulling out a book and like following the trail of symptoms to a diagnosis. But that's the way the system works. So like I said, got diagnosed with bipolar when I was a teenager. And they did this in a very unethical way. The one time I went to the hospital, I walked out without a diagnosis, without any medication, because I wasn't actually mentally unhealthy or unstable in any way that could be specifically diagnosed. I was going through a bad time in my life because my parents were crazy. Or at least being crazy with each other. And I was in the middle of that. But I wasn't bipolar. I've never been bipolar. I can't say I will never be bipolar, but so far it's looking good. And I want to explain how this happened. So, I got the report back on my diagnosis. And I had said one thing that they were able to use to pull a diagnosis out of. And that was that there are a lot of bad things going on in my life right now, but I'm really good at making myself happy again. I believe was almost exactly what I said. But I was basically implying that though there are lots of crappy things in my life, I'm pretty good at bouncing back and being optimistic. And they turned that into a bipolar diagnosis, and that does not bipolar make. And this is what happens. This is what happens because I was being taken to a diagnostician who was being paid to diagnose me with something. But ethically, that's not what they're supposed to do. If you don't have any mental disorder, if you don't have any mental illness, if all you have is mental distress, they should not be diagnosing you with any sort of mental illness or mental disorder. You know, if they wanted to diagnose me with some amount of mental distress because of what was going on with my parents, so be it. But I was not bipolar. I was not chemically imbalanced, nor was I demonstrating any sort of behavior that suggested that I was bipolar. What I said and what I demonstrated was that, yeah, I get sad sometimes because there are some sad things going on in my life. But I'm optimistic, and especially because I was in counseling regularly at the time, I was developing more tools, skills, and habits every day to combat what was going on in my life and bounce back faster and faster. It's a lot of what I teach people to do now when it comes to what I teach with my clients. It's basically my elevator pitch. You know, I teach people the tools, skills, and habits to be healthy, happy adults before they need them. And we can do this so that when we inevitably wind up in a painful situation, suffering doesn't have to occur after the fact. That's our choice as to whether or not we are going to suffer. But that doesn't make me bipolar. That makes me good at taking in what my counselor was teaching me and actually effectively using it in my life. And this happens all the time. I know so many people who get diagnosed with bipolar disorder, ADHD. They're often women, and they're not. They're not bipolar. They're not ADHD. They just don't have their lives together, or they've been through some sort of other trauma or previous emotional wounding that they haven't healed from. But that doesn't mean that they're chemically imbalanced, and usually in my experience, if they do have some sort of mental disorder, it's not permanent. Mental disorders do not have to be permanent, lifelong, sustained through life. Once you've healed from the trauma and the emotional wounds, which you can do at any time, you can see the relief of whatever mental disorder you were experiencing prior to the healing. And so this is what I find people misunderstand all too often. That's why I did a whole video on the difference between mental distress, mental disorders, and mental illness, because they are all different. And we can have mental disorders that come into our lives for a small period of time because our lives are out of order, that aren't lifelong if we heal, like a mental illness is actually a lifelong illness, as opposed to a mental disorder, which you're going to experience for a short period of time while your life is out of order or prior to healing. So I just wanted to share that with you guys before this was all over, because it matters. Our mental health matters, and we can be proactive with our mental health, and we don't have to attach ourselves to these labels of these lifelong disorders when getting our life in order will alleviate them. And that's one of the reasons why I love studying under Jordan Peterson so much. I've taken the course that he has available and read all of his material, because though I do very much, and probably will for the rest of my life, have spirituality at the forefront of, sorry, hold on one good. I just want to make sure my lighting's good. Even though I will always have spirituality at the forefront of my private practice, mental health is just as important as physical health, is just as important as, I lost one of my lights, is just as important as having spirituality in your life. We have the mind, body, spirit connection that are all interwoven and connected to our overall well-being. And we can be just as proactive with our mental health as we are with our physical health. So it's important to understand this, and that you do not have to be saddled with some sort of diagnosis if you're not chemically imbalanced. And you can even be chemically imbalanced for short periods of time. A great example of this is my own personal experience of having been depressed because my best friend in the whole wide world died. I don't know if she died in my arms. I don't know if she was dead before we found her, but I held her dead body, close to dead body, in my arms. And I spent a long time healing from that, many years. And then one day I was fortunate enough to get to go see a therapist that I really trusted. And I happened to be walking in on the day of the anniversary of my best friend dying, which was a complete and total coincidence. And when we figured that out, she had me walk through some cognitive behavioral therapy exercise. And when I walked out of that room that day, after spending about an hour and a half with her, I walked out so light in comparison to how I walked in. The depression just lifted from me because I healed, actually emotionally healed, something that I had otherwise only prior to that intellectually processed. Because there is a difference between intellectually processing something and actually emotionally healing. So I just want to leave everybody with this, which is that when it comes to our overall health and well-being as human beings, and this relates to our relationship to ourselves as well as our relationship to others, how our entire life plays out, we want to take care of our mental health just as we take care of our physical health. And we can be proactive in taking care of our mental health just as we are proactive in taking care of our physical health. That's what I do. That's what I do with people. I work with them to heal anything that's been keeping their lives in a state of distress, even though the situation that brought that distress into their lives has already passed them by, sometimes after many years. But we carry that with us if we don't truly emotionally release from that situation. So I help my clients heal any distress, any stress that they've been holding on to from prior situations, and then start to get proactive with their mind, body, and spirit health so that they don't have to experience the suffering that can come after pain. I wanted to say that a little more eloquently, but that's where we've landed. Pain may be inevitable, but suffering is optional, and even how often we experience pain does not have to be inevitable. We can shorten, we can decrease how much pain we experience in our lives and eliminate the suffering almost entirely, if not entirely, depending on the given situation, depending on how much we are willing to get proactive when it comes to our mental, physical, and spiritual health. So, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. At the end of the day, when it comes to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, I can't take anything. These two psychiatrists, psychologists. I can't, oh, hold on. Oh, my knee was getting sore there in that position. That's been happening a lot recently. I need to stretch more. I've been so proactive with my mental health. I need to get a little more proactive with my physical health, to be perfectly honest. Some of us do that. But anyway, when it comes to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, when it comes to Dr. Curry and Dr. Hughes' testimony, and this might actually go for some others as well, I will not name them right now specifically, although a couple come to mind because I did not prepare for them for this particular video. But there are several psychologists, possibly psychiatrists, I can't remember, that testified in this case that we cannot take into consideration whatsoever because of simply the fact that they came to the what's the word I'm looking for? They came to the conclusion, that's the word I'm looking for. They came to the conclusion that most suited the side that they were retained by. And so by that factor alone, we cannot, no matter how much we want to believe them, take it into consideration because there are so many conflicting opinions. Now, if we had, let's say, Dr. Curry's testimony retained by Johnny Depp, and she came to the diagnosis of histrionic disorder, but then someone on Amber Heard's side also came to that diagnosis, then we might be able to start taking some of these things into consideration. But as far as I've seen, and I've watched all of these days of trial all the way through because I've wanted to talk about this, and I will not talk about anything I'm not well educated on, because neither side has come up with any diagnosis that doesn't favor their side's opinion. That means we just have to throw them all out the window and not take them into consideration. And I hope that the jury realizes this as well, because if both sides are just presenting experts that favor their side, you've got to assume that no matter what they genuinely believe, we might just have an expert problem here. So, yeah. That, and of course, be proactive with your mental health, just as you are proactive with your physical health. Or if you're not proactive with either, you can be proactive with all of it, your mind, body, and spiritual health. So don't neglect them. Often, and I talked about this on Instagram the other day, we find that people think that you have to have some major trauma or wound emotionally to even start to be aware of your mental health. But this isn't the case. Our mental health, we have minds, we have brains, so we have mental health, just as we have bodies, therefore we have physical health. And the more and more we can be proactive about those, the more healthy we are, the happier we are. When all the systems are healthy, happiness comes naturally. As A Course in Miracles says, to heal is to make happy. Both are true. We have to heal and then get proactive so that we can naturally be happy. And when we do, we are. So, thank you guys for joining me for another video. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. If you're enjoying my videos here, I know you will enjoy all of the links in the description. That includes working with me one-on-one. I have 5 spaces open right now, so you can just sign up if you know you're ready to end those cycles of suffering in your life. Figure out what's blocking you, figure out what you have left to heal so that you can get your life, as Jordan Peterson would say, in order, and then proactively have all of those systems be healthy so that happiness can just come naturally in your life. Who doesn't want that? To not have to worry about whether or not you're going to be happy, because you know that you are taking care of yourself in a way that naturally happiness is just going to be in your life. So I have links to signing up with me one-on-one in the description. I also have the link to, not the link to, but I have my email in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. You can also throw something in the comments here. I also have my free clarity call, which I use for both answering questions one-on-one when it comes to my one-on-one, as well as I use my free clarity call for wellness dōTERRA calls. dōTERRA is another link down in the description. That is your one-stop shop for all of your natural living needs. If you want to replace any of the synthetic chemicals you still have in your home with the best plant-based products, natural living products, dōTERRA, it's the best. If you just have natural living plant-based products in your home, organic products in your home that just don't seem to be working out for you, dōTERRA, it's seriously the best, like the best. I have never found anything better, which is why I'm talking about it, because I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't honestly believe it. Like, I've had so many people over the last 2 years that I've come online with my private practice offer me ambassadorships, and I turn them all down if I don't have experience with them, which is many of them, and I won't ever talk about one of them until I have experience with them. So I have been using dōTERRA personally, not just selling dōTERRA as a dōTERRA wellness advocate. I don't really sell it in that sense, but I will admit I do make money from anything that someone purchases under my, what do they call it, enrollment status. But that said, that's not why I talk about dōTERRA, not at all. The reason why I talk about dōTERRA is because I believe that we can eliminate completely all of those synthetic chemicals out of our lives and get back to where we have nature really take care of us on a daily basis when it comes to soaps, detergents, this oil, root to tip serum I just showed in my last video as a treatment for your hair, so much more, surface cleaners, everything, and the essential oils that they source to produce these products, because that is the basis for everything that dōTERRA offers, is the most potent, most pure, that's apparently a tongue twister for me, most potent and most pure essential oils, and literally the most pure. They are the only essential oil company on the market that is actually rated for internal ingestion, internal use. The purest. And it makes their products literally the best. So there's that. If you want to just check out dōTERRA for yourself, my link's in the description for that too. We also have our dōTERRA Witches group. If you want to learn more about it before you check it out, join our dōTERRA Witches group on Instagram or Facebook. We teach about dōTERRA, as well as we do witchy things like gather for full and new moons on Zoom, and gather to watch what we call witch flicks, where we watch movies together once a month, which is really fun. So yeah. I also have my email. Don't want to forget that, because my Ritualize Your Life workshop is coming up this next week. So if you'd like to get in on this free workshop, make sure that you're signed up for my email list, because that's the only way you will get in on any of the free things like workshops that I do. Otherwise, Patreon. I have my Patreon, which has all of my workshop replays, guided meditations, journal exercises, my intuitive lifestyle course, which is the basics of what I do with my clients one-on-one, and so much more, starting at just $23 a month. So that's another way you can get in on my workshops. All of my workshop replays are there. I have 2 years of having gathered all of the teachings that I love to teach, as well as I've loved to have had taught to me. Jordan Peterson, Tony Robbins, Gabby Bernstein, and so many more. Wayne Dyer, A Course in Miracles. Right now I'm doing the Spirituality 2.0 series, where we are doing these A Course in Miracles student workbook exercises, and there are 365 of those, and we are only on number 18, 19. So we got a ways to go for that. I can't even call it a mini series anymore. because Spirituality 2.0 is going to have all 365 of the A Course in Miracles student workbook exercises in it. And then some. So $23, let me tell you, with all of the thousands of dollars it would take to pay for any of these individual courses. Tony Robbins, Gabby Bernstein, Wayne Dyer is unfortunately not with us anymore, but Jordan Peterson, $23 is a steal, having them all come together under one Patreon subscription, when individually you would pay thousands of dollars for each of them. So I want to make these available to everybody because I feel like everybody should have access to these teachings. I have some Tony Robbins journal exercises that I'm going to be putting up very shortly here. So yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Check out those links in the description. Thank you to my 101 subscribers. Last time I checked, we got that custom URL. So now I can tell people to go to youtube.com/balanceblackwood rather than youtube.com/randomly generated blah, blah, blah. Thank you to all of you here that make this possible. All of you that are here who make this possible. May the energies you serve you well, and let's keep making our way through.